Modern computers. Yeah, I got my own cheat sheet here. Good afternoon. Welcome to the August 15th, 2023 Roads and Right of Ways Committee. Meeting is being conducted in person as well as remotely pursuant to Chapter 2 of the Act of 2023. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and that all attendees are participating by video conference or in person, but they're also part of the video conference. Because of that, the chair will conduct roll call for attendance and an all vote. Zoom participants are asked to identify themselves. The name will be noted on the screen under your Zoom connection. All Zoom participants are asked to mute their devices unless addressing the committee. For public comment, all members, after I've spoken, the chair will afford the public the opportunity to comment in the meeting. At this point, we'll do a roll call of numbers. Alan Reinhardt. Here. Louise Saperstein is not here at the moment. Rick Atherton. I'm here. Nat Lowell, not here at the moment. Phil Smith. Here. Nelson Eldridge. Here. Ed Gillum. Here. And Bill Breedis, we have 1, 2. We have 6. Also joining us is Mike Burns, Transportation Manager. Mike.
Good afternoon.
Thank you. First order of business, nobody from the public here, so I don't believe there's any public comment. Next item on the agenda is we got a message from Erica that the select board had reaffirmed the positions of the members, and we needed to give her an updated org setup. So at this point, do we have any motions and nominations to achieve that? Rick?
Yeah, unless the incumbents are seeking to leave their stations, I might recommend we carry forward the list of incumbents for 1 more year in their officer positions. That's Bill Breeder as chair, Lee Saperstein as secretary, and Alan Reinhardt as vice chair.
Second. Motions were made and seconded. Any further discussion? We will do a roll call. Alan Reinhardt.
Aye.
Rick Atherton.
Aye.
Bill Smith.
Aye.
Nelson Eldridge.
Aye.
Ed Gillum.
Aye.
And Bill Breeder, aye. Thank you. Previously, we didn't have a full quorum to approve the minutes from June 20th and July 23rd. Anyone see a reason we can't accept those tonight, this afternoon?
Motion to approve those minutes.
Do we have a second? All in favor? Alan Reinhardt.
Aye.
Rick Atherton.
This is the minutes for what date again?
Well, June 20th and July 23rd, so the last 2 months.
July 18th, I read on the.
Yeah, July 18th.
So anyway, July 18, I wasn't here. I can't vote on that.
Okay. So, Rick Atherton, Phil Smith.
I abstain on the June meeting, but I am the one.
Okay, so we have
You
now
want to
have a quorum for the one that
do you want to do them separately? Yes.
And we have a quorum for the one that Rick had abstained, which is great. Nelson.
Yes.
Gillum
Aye.
and Bill Breedis is aye. Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
One question. I always find it helpful to read the minutes, and they sometimes spark a question or an item of interest. And one in the July 18. I think Phil was reporting about the Harbor Plan Update Committee and indicated that chapter 91 wasn't a high priority. I'm not quite sure how to react to that. I would think public access, especially on private docks, for example, which I assume would be in the Harbor Plan update. I don't really know about that.
Did I say it was not a high priority?
I'm just reading the minutes. On behalf of the Harbor Plan Update Committee, he noted that this was not a high priority item for them. So maybe that's just not
No, that's not
a
right.
good statement.
Where is that?
That's on page 3 of the minutes for July 18th.
Oh, I see. All right. Oh,
It's the
Well, let
chapter
me put it
91.
this way, I mean, it is a priority, but it is not something that everybody has with their feedback and everything. Or banging down the door and saying, we really like chapter 91 and we want to do more about it. Anything like that, so. However, I think maybe Lee was interpreting that comment.
so it's lower than totem pole.
It's not on top of mind, everybody's mind. There's a lot of other things that they're concerned about.
Good. I think, just to remind it, I think there are a lot of chapter 91 issues with that whole area that could become important at some point.
There are, but people in the open meetings we've had and the feedback we've gotten, that's not a burning issue.
That I can understand, that people who come to the meeting are probably interested in water quality and other issues. But I just think from our point of view, we're glad to have you there.
Right.
And there may come a time where this could come
Right.
back at us.
Right.
And I have one other item, if I don't mind.
Yep.
This is on the roads and right-of-way ongoing projects list. Dated 7/11. And again, it just happens to be on the chapter 91 monitor project. And it says that the GIS department head, Nathan Porter, is making available online chapter 91 licenses. And I thought of Nathan as helping us out with a map of the location of those are, and I hope he would do this task, but I'm not sure I remember that, Phil. That would indicate you have to get copies of them all, arrange to post them, and I don't know that he saw that as part of
There
their
is-
job description.
There is no organized listing of chapter 91 right now.
But, and I agree, we ought to do that. I just didn't know that Nathan was the guy.
No, that's,
I think we ought to,
So we want to, whether we want to tweak that, because.
well, I think maybe we want to say that, you know, our committee thinks a proper public making available the chapter 91 license that we have in some way, perhaps on our website. Or I'm just thinking of an idea, or we can pick it up another.
well, I mean, it's also something that the Harbor Plan Committee would like to have,
Yeah, exactly.
but it is something that, it's not there now.
They
I'm
have
being
one for the
charitable when
last-
I say
Well,
that.
for the
Yeah.
last update, they have about a 10-page document
Right,
with
and-
all the chapter 91 licenses at that point.
exactly. And we have requested from Jeff Carlson over the years that we get this list or that they provide a list of the chapter 91 license.
Okay, that triggers something. I remember at our last meeting. Jeff took it upon himself to provide at one of our next meetings what he had on chapter 91.
Good. He has 2 big binders, I know that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
And so he admitted, well, he not admitted, but he stated that if there is anybody on Nantucket that has anything that resembles an organized listing, he probably does.
Yeah, right.
Good. Well, I think that's good to pursue. Thank you.
Right.
So let me just clarify if I could, because the ongoing project list. You'll note. I'm sticking it at the end of every agenda. And I'm updating it as we come up with some sort of thing, and I think that's, and I put the dates after what the latest update was. So do we need to tweak? We get down to it. And let me actually share the screen so people can see it.
See, you have an item in there, requested Concom to supply copies, so that's really just for Alan. So that's there. I just think the first comment might be, instead of the GIS department, the committee is working with Jeff Carlson to help make sure.
If you look at the,
Fashion.
if you look at it right up there, okay, I can, what is it that we want to change? Where it says, we want to change that.
I think we might
verbiage.
change where it says GIS department.
Yeah,
And we might say something like, the committee is working with Jeff Carlson to help maintain an updated list of chapter 91 licenses. And make them available online.
I like the idea of asking to get current licenses. Because that would be something that it would be. I think that would be something good for us to know in the current. And then when Jeff Carlson produces whatever he produces, I can work with him to get that to this committee, but I think it would be worthwhile for us in the meantime. If various applications are coming in, that we see them, just
Right, and I can share with you, I know for certain lots that have come to the Concom that have chapter 91 licenses. We haven't received any
Right.
such notification.
right, and I think it might be instructive for us. To start to see these live ones, because, we see all the construction going on at Grand Point, for example. I gotta believe
It's gotta be.
there are live licenses there.
Yeah.
so,
That's all I
all right,
wanted.
so let's just tweak that a bit, so roads and right of ways. Is working with Jeff Carlson to,
Maintain a list of 91, chapter 91 licenses existing in Nantucket.
With a focus on, licenses that are going forward, I guess you would say.
And making the information available.
And making the information available in some public database, right? Because going forward, you're right, that's the crux of the matter. I mean, there's lots of these licenses that have been redone and done, 100 years or more
We
ago.
could spend a lot of time going over ancient history.
But you really need, when you see these construction projects and they're in chapter 190, influence place. There should be a license that's pretty easy to find.
And it would also help us understand the criteria and what is currently, how it's being handled.
Especially if we're trying to do this harbor walk.
okay, so I will tweak that, so the next agenda will have that tweak in there. We'll see how badly I mess it up. Yeah, and just for, Nat Lee is not with us, but he's gonna get the minutes from the recording. So we just note that Nat arrived at 4:14.
Thank you. Dealing with the once a year smell in the whole entire downtown coming from Easton Street and the jetties. Okay, and everybody calls.
What's this?
It's just
Just the,
low tide,
Old-fashioned.
rain,
all that stuff.
nature.
Well,
Smells.
we had two
Okay,
incidents not too long ago.
That
where-
storm they had last week down there,
I know about.
really
this.
hit them, so there's,
Yes, and it can fool you. Sewer gas, I can tell the difference in 2 seconds. But some of this rotten seaweedy smell is a little harder to figure out sometimes, believe it or not. When you're not thinking about it.
All right, so one last item before we get to Mike. And let me
Yeah, let's do this quickly, because I think what Mike has to offer is really.
we could go out of order. If we had.
the next item is just so you can acknowledge, so we can pass on to the Wisconsin Blood vote. They have.
You want to move that item to the end so you can
Okay, let's do
move
that.
on with.
Yeah.
Mike now.
All right, so I will kill that. So Mike, going to review the long-range transportation plan. And Mike, you should be able to see your screen.
Yeah, let me know if one, you can hear me, and two, if you're getting what I'm sharing.
Oh, good.
Is that working?
You have a-
All right. Well, thanks for having me, and I want to apologize for getting my wires crossed last month to attend your meeting. But it looks like the link worked now, and happy to be here to give you a bit of a high level overview of the contents of the long range transportation plan. If Nat's in the room, this won't be the first time he's heard this presentation. And guess what, Nat? It's not going to be your last one either. We got to do that again next week. I'll just say that, as you know, that the this long range plan is a federally required planning document updated every 4 years to guide major transportation investments for at least the next 20 years. Every region in the nation is required to develop and maintain this plan to receive federal transportation funding. This update has been shaped through 3 rounds of public outreach. It included a visioning, prioritization, and now a review phase with a horizon year of 2044. And now it's under public review and accepting comments through August 21st. And as shown here on the project schedule, on August 21st, the NPDC on the right-hand side here, the NPDC will close the public review period and finalize the LRTP after 4 months of development and those 3 phases of outreach. The development process began back in April with the visioning outreach, and included 2 rounds of surveying, one for a visioning survey and then a prioritization phase that also included a survey. The NPDC also finalized the vision, goals, and priorities for public review last month, and now we're in the ongoing public review phase using the town's new public outreach platform called Zen City. And I'll briefly go over what this site is. It's been used to collect responses to our public surveys, share our recorded presentations that we've conducted at the NPDC meetings, which summarized each step of the process. And now it's being used to collect input on the draft report and dependencies. To participate in this, simply type in the website address, which is on the slide here, or scan the QR code if you have your phone handy, and scan that. And just scroll down to the bottom of this web page to review the important documents section, which is where the report and appendices are. And then scroll down a little further and click leave your comments, which is a way you can let us know who you are, whether you support the priorities, and what your thoughts are on the draft document. And I'll briefly go over some population and land use trends. Again, just very quickly, the year-round population grew about 40% from 2010 to 2020. The University of Massachusetts Donahue Institute and the Massachusetts Department of Transportation is projecting about a 10% growth rate each decade through 2050, which will add about 5,000 year-round residents over the next 30 years. The population is concentrated by design in the middle of the island along Bartlett Road, Fairgrounds Road, and Old South Roads. You all may know that. And you may also know that the higher volume roadways correlates with these areas, and includes corridors along Milestone Road, Old South Road, and Sparks Avenue. And on this map, you'll see the green halo around the middle of the islands. That's our town overlay district, as you may know. And our land use policy uses this town and country pattern of development to focus the intensities of uses and infrastructure investments within the town overlay, which includes downtown, Mid-Island, and the airport areas. Nantucket has done a great job of acquiring property for conservation. The trend is shown on the graph here, and it shows that over 61% of the island is now tax exempt, meaning it's publicly owned or in conservation. And this is good for transportation, as it encourages densities needed to support active transportation, such as walking, biking, and using public transportation, because things are actually within proximity to walk or bike to. As I mentioned, this plan has been shaped through public outreach and surveying through the visioning and prioritization phases. The visioning phase was conducted through May and early June. with the results shared at the NPDC's June 26th meeting. The prioritization phase was out for a shorter period in late June and early July to gather additional input on planning tasks that would be used to implement the vision and goals. So what did we hear through both of these surveys? Well, we heard from over 1,400 respondents, which is about triple the participation that we received 4 years ago. Most of these participants answered all questions. Half of them were year-round residents. There were some demographic categories that were a little bit more representative than the island as a whole. So we'll need to improve participation from younger, lower income, and renter groups in the future. I'll note that the increase in participation was fueled by use of our social media and reflects the participation that was generated through our communications staff. More transportation surveying will likely continue into the future at some frequency, either quarterly or bi-monthly. This is to better inform our planning process. So be on the lookout and please participate and let us know your opinions on transportation. So what did we hear? Most either drive alone or walk frequently. They liked the island's paths, safe travel, and proximity to things. So I guess the town and country pattern of development is working. Things are close by. Concerns include congestion, quality of pavement, and issues traveling between the mainland. There was an overwhelming support for our complete streets policy, which some of you may be familiar with. Support for our safety initiatives, and there was support for a vehicle limitation strategy. Respondents told us they wanted more affordable or free bus service, as well as travel between the mainland, especially for vehicle transport. With respect to the vehicle limitations, we provided an array of limiting strategies, and respondents told us out of this array of options, they got to pick 3. And respondents told us that vehicle space on the vehicle ferry should be prioritized for local residents as a means of addressing vehicles on the islands. Limiting vehicles through permits has also been discussed in the past, and we heard that it's still a preferred method. We also heard that closing some streets to vehicle traffic altogether and creating a pedestrian-only environment was also preferred. We heard respondents want more space for walking, biking, and using public transportation. Roundabouts and turning lanes were preferred to create additional capacity at intersections. And in order to be sensitive to the island, which is part of the vision statement, respondents told us to evaluate impacts to the natural and cultural environment. So we'll keep doing that as part of our required permitting processes. And improvements should help reduce greenhouse gas emissions and improve road resiliency and reliability. Greenhouse gas emissions are evaluated to be included in the TIP, which is our 4-year program of transportation improvements, and that's required by Mass DOT right now. Respondents did not support dedicated bus lanes, signalized intersections, or additional travel lanes, which is a little different than the turning lanes, and just meant that we heard from the public that they didn't want 3-lane or 4-lane roadways on the island to address capacity issues. So this next section of the presentation involves specifically what the vision, goals, and priorities are. And the vision statement here is at the top, and the goals are on the left-hand side of the slide here. And the vision is to achieve by the 2044 horizon year, a safe, reliable, accessible, affordable transportation system with vehicle limitations that is sensitive to the island. And the priorities to achieve this are improving accommodation of active transportation users. These are bicyclists and pedestrians, utilizing the complete streets principles, which the town already has a complete streets policy. So we'll just utilize those for project development. There's also a priority to institute a parking management program downtown, which is in line with the town's strategic plan. Another priority to better incorporate and score projects based on natural and cultural impacts and emissions. And we're going to work on a strategy to get better at that. The safety priorities are already included in our work program and are part of a safety action plan that will be developed over this next year. Nantucket is partnering with the Martha's Vineyard Commission and the Franklin Regional Council of Governments to develop safety action plans for the 3 rural regions. And that's going to be ongoing through this next year. And the affordability and reliability priorities will need to be better incorporated into our work program. A study of the optimal vehicle capacity and regulating the number of vehicles is not currently in our work program, and does not currently align with the town strategic plan. So that needs to be added as a task for staff time and any use of professional services for those priorities. Advocating for affordable rates and priority for resident vehicles on the Steamship Authority could easily be incorporated as part of administrative tasks and part of our coordination with the authority. There are a number of recommendations and priorities suggested for capital improvements to improve roadways and transit. This map, I guess most of you might be interested in, is a map of our roadway systems, at least public roadways, and the 2 bridges. I know that there's over 80 miles of asphalt pavement, and I did note that we had a complete streets policy that, you know, those corridors ought to be should accommodate all users and abilities, accommodate bicyclists, pedestrians, and freight traffic if there's a freight, if it's part of the truck route, etc. And we'll also, and I mentioned the safety action plan, we will be incorporating a safe system approach for roadway planning and project development, and I'll get more in depth into that over this next year as part of the safety action plan development. Regarding the bridges, the Millie's and Massasoit bridges are in poor condition, and I believe there is design funding allocated to those to address their poor condition. The pavement management, so the quality of the asphalt pavement along the 80 miles of the system. In 2018, it was given a rating of 87.16. That's out of 100 possible points. That's since fallen now in 2023 to 81 RSA rating. And the recommended budget annually that's recommended is 13 million to address the condition of some of the poor sections of roadway, or the, you know, if there's neglect, then the cost of those improvements escalate over time. And with related to the resiliency of the roadways, there are 9 miles of roadway that are said to be flooding during high tide by 2070. That was included in the coastal resiliency plan, and recommendations out of that resiliency plan also include improvements along Matticat Road and in Pulpus Road, since those there may need to be some need for evacuation in those areas, and there's some bottlenecks there, at least where some low points of those bridges that could flood and compromise the ability to use those as evacuation routes.
And Mike,
Yes, sir.
I could just back up to that slide. So before you do your next presentation, you might want to snag resiliency, roadway will flood versus food.
Oh, flood instead of food. Yeah. Thank you for catching that. We'll make that edit on the slide there. Our budget, again, this is a federally required plan, so our federal funding is definitely a challenge. For this plan, there's about $1 million in federal funding available annually by right, since Nantucket is its own region. That's about 19 million over the 20-year life of this plan. This is currently shown as being split amongst 3 project types: intersections, roadways or complete streets projects, as well as specific bike and pedestrian projects. And we're showing these programs rather than showing specific projects due to the physical constraint requirements. Right now, our projects require more funding than is shown in this table. Project costs more than $1 million. So we need to secure discretionary state or federal funding, or supplement the funding needs with local funding to implement these projects. For now, staff is simply providing available funding and the targets for each type of project rather than specific projects, although we do have a project list with descriptions as part of this plan. And That's for the highway program. The transit program is a little less certain, or a lot less certain, I'll say. The long range plan, the long range funding is generally not been provided beyond the 4 years that are shown in our 4-year improvement program. So that's why the out years on this table are shown as to be determined. There's generally an issue with showing federal transit funding that's available for regions. The bottom table here is only showing statewide funding for capital projects. Over the next year or two, time needs to be devoted to updating our comprehensive regional transit plan. That's required to be updated every 4 years. And we need to do that updating this next cycle to better clarify the investment costs and available resources from federal and state grants, so that we can populate these out at least with what our aspirational goals are with project costs over the next 20 years, and then try to match those up with state grants and perhaps revenues from the parking management system that is required because we have a parking management district in the downtown area, and those revenues generated from that need to fund things like transit projects. So we'll do a better job of populating these tables over the next year or two as part of that updating process. And quickly, I'll just note that the action plan section does include a listing of roadway and bike pedestrian priorities. These tables include readiness of a project, as well as scoring to gauge their impact. Regarding the scoring, these are based on 4 factors: congestion, mobility, safety, and sustainability. And we use a -1 or +1 in this system to such as under condition, the extent of pavement or bridge improvement. If it's a brand new road and the idea is to redo the pavement on that, then logically we would say that that's not necessarily an improvement to the project. But if it's a roadway with extremely poor condition and the improvement would address that, then we give it a +1, and then we go down each of the different criteria under these factors to create a score for a particular project. The readiness shown on the right hand side here, we use a scale of A to F. A is a project's ready to be built, the design's complete, and F is that it's just an idea and the project is completely unfunded. And most of our projects are somewhere in between, either from B to an E category. And going to that list here, this is the priority list for roadway projects now. Please note that ongoing projects are highlighted in red, and those include Newtown Road and the Surfside area roads, Lovers Lane, Orkawa, Marnahanset. Those are being managed by town administration and DPW right now. And then we also have projects along Pleasant Street and Williams Lane that are more in the conceptual stages, but those are funded and are advancing. This whole list of roadway projects, and again, these are intersections and corridors, updating the cost of those. We need to get better at what we're using for unit cost, but just using an inflation factor from our previous estimates. These are at least $50 million in improvements that are, if we want to implement them over the next 20 years, we'll need to reconcile the differences. I had noted earlier that our 20-year budget is about 20 million in federal funding. And if we have $50 million in projects, then and we want to implement this whole list, obviously you can see the discrepancy there and need to supplement that either through grants at the federal and state level or with local revenues. And I'll just again note that a description of these projects is provided in the appendix, and it's very similar to what was done the last planning cycle for the 2020 long range plan. Similarly, this table shows the priority of bike and pedestrian projects. Again, in red, Sparks Avenue, Tom Nevers, and Walnut corridors are currently under design for paths. The Mill Hill path at the very top is currently being managed by the land bank. And just with the roadways, the value of these projects is at least 24 million. So altogether, there's about $75 million in roadway and active transportation projects that have a demand for the 20 million that's available without any grant or local funding contributions. And for public transportation, again, the region's transit plan needs to be updated, and recommendations are briefly summarized here. They include improvements and expansion of the airport route along Old South Road. That's an extremely important corridor since it's very dense and heavily settled, and transit frequency is much needed along that corridor. There's also a recommendation for a new Hummock Pond Road route, as well as replacing the current fleet with lower emission vehicles. Improvements are suggested to be paid for through either grants or primarily through the parking revenues that would be generated through paid parking. And to wrap up, the NPDC will meet on August 21st to close out the public review period and finalize the long-range transportation plan for this particular cycle. This would conclude the 5-meeting process. And again, to participate, simply visit the long-range transportation plan project page, scroll down to the important documents, and then click the option at the bottom of the page to leave your comments after you reviewed the plan. Please do this by August 21st. That's when the review period closes, and let us know if you agree with the proposed policies and leave your comment. And I just want to thank you again for the opportunity to share this with you. I look forward to continued participation. I'm happy to answer any questions, or as we had discussed, at least offline, ideas for policy documents from this particular committee that you think might be worthwhile pursuing over the next year or so that we might include a more coordination with the Roads and Right-of-Way Committee during the next updating cycle. So again, Mr. Chairman, thanks again for having me.
Thanks, Mike. I know a couple of members have some questions here. Before I open it up, I just want to let everybody know that I will copy all the members your presentation that you sent. It's the file is small enough, I can send it along. And then I'm sure we will be able to include it in minutes that way also. So we have some questions from the troops here. I'd like to go first. Bill?
Thank you, Mike. This is Phil Smith. So with pedestrian, would that be the walking paths alongside streets?
Exactly, sidewalks or the side paths that we have all over the island. Yep.
Because we have, as you may know, with our committee and our to-do list, there are a couple of paths that it's just screaming for something to get done. And we've been talking about it forever. And, you know, it just seems like that's all that happens. And I'm thinking particularly, you have it down there, I think, Pleasant Street, around William Street and all of that. I mean, every day doesn't go by that you don't see a line of people walking along that street. And so I would just say that's a huge safety issue. But there are an awful lot of other ones.
Could you just take your presentation down so that
Yeah, let me stop sharing.
thank
There we
you.
go.
That's all I did. The other comment I thought was, I saw a listing of all those things and everything seemed to be a D or an F. And there were a couple of things that just jumped out at me that, you know, the intersection at Fairgrounds and Old South Road. I mean, that is no way a D or an F. I mean,
What is it? Beyond an F? F minus?
Yeah. An M.
I can tell you what the F,
it could go all the way down to Valero's from the Rotary.
the F minus is the voters saying no to everything we could have already done. It's 20 years this year for the high school intersection, just so you know. 20. Just so you know. And it's been blocked by 4 people.
I mean, I think
So
they
it's
even did a thing a few years ago.
The
That's-
wooden thing.
Old South Road.
The wooden
yeah,
thing worked, and everybody made fun of it, and then when it got removed, people said, hey, that worked. This is what we live in, that's why I want to talk to Mike about real quick, because I'm like in my wicked frustrated mood, especially after last night. Meeting, dealing with something that I just can't even believe, somebody actually still brings up property values in Nantucket being affected by a project. I'm like, have you read Daybreak on Sundays? You're worried about the price of a property here, really? Come on, that's crazy. So, Mike.
Yep.
You know that a lot of that stuff that's in there is from that Beta guy, what's his name, from before COVID? When we did that, people might not know, we did this Old South Corridor project, evaluation wasn't that the name of it?
Yeah, the old South Road Corridor study, which included, actually was almost that whole circle of Milestone Roads, Old South Roads, up to No Beer Farm Road, that whole circuit.
And that was the first time, I think it was 2019, I could be off a little bit. The first time we ever heard about a roundabout from at Milestone and nobody had found. I was like jumping up and down, this is the greatest thing I've ever heard, and I haven't heard of it yet. And now, of course, a citizen writes an article, and now they're fine with it, so I guess we're okay to move forward now. So anyway, Mike, the Popus one, you know how I feel about that, locals won't think that's a good idea. I think that turning thing for the state, for that bike path. Getting the funding for the bike path to go up to Island Lumber. Which I want everyone in this room to know about that, so in case some people don't know. There's a 150-foot layout milestone, just so you know. It's 150 feet, it's unbelievable. And there's a plan to continue that Monomoy little bike pathy thing up to behind Island Lumber, so people don't have to keep crossing the road all the time to get over there. It's kind of crazy, but the state, correct me if I'm wrong, Mike, the state wants us to have a spot where people are bearing left to go to Popus, where there's a little thing where you can like pass the vehicle that is waiting. Am I correct on that?
Yeah, turning lane at the along Milestone Road, going on to Pulpus Road, correct?
So that to me is fine. Like, we have other spots that are so bad that need to be fixed and needed to be fixed before we knew what a roundabout was. Because, you know, we weren't flying to Europe figuring it out yet. So, Mike, the other thing I wanted to just, bring up too is the unfinished bike path stuff, and Phil kind of alluded to a little bit of this with his comments. There's a lot of, we didn't build a 10-foot bike path to Eel Point. That's the first one that's 10 feet wide. And now they're all 8 or shrinking because of the grass growing around and all that. Mike, with the evolution of the electric bike in about an hour, going from 0 to 100, no pun intended, but it is. I feel that we need to consider widening, at least if we do any overlaying of Sconset Road bike path, which we did in 2009 and left it at 8 feet with all that space and all that equipment, it's just kind of crazy. We should be widening bike paths a little bit in future maintenance. And I also think, and this is something I've been talking to numerous people about that can maybe get something done here, is we're not doing shoulders. Now, roads fall apart because there's no shoulders. It's not because the pavement is bad. It's not because the guy that's doing it doesn't know what he's doing. There is no integrity on the edges. You have to have a berm to hold the road together or it will deteriorate. Unless it's 25 feet, 26 feet wide, then it won't. But if it's 22 feet, you got to have it. And I think that, Mike, that can happen with this new DPW director guy, Andrew, who's pretty smart. He's young and knows a lot, and he's been here a while and sees how things are. And there's ways to build roads and resurface roads here to accommodate these new modes of transportation and keep the road intact and not make the road look bigger, to the point of where we don't want roads that are too wide, but we don't need them to be 19.5 feet wide when they should be 22, which is what we have now in a lot of places. So there you go. That's my speech for now.
People get their cars.
It's all true. The cars aren't bigger.
I wanna know what happened. I wanna know what happened last night.
What
Alan,
happened last night? Oh,
I'm
two
kidding.
old properties that were there before the whole world, and all the new people don't like them.
How could that?
That's when I
How
popped the
could that be?
gasket.
Alan?
And believe it.
Okay, I just have a quick question, Mike. I thank you for the link to the report that you just showed us. Is there a paper copy of that available somewhere?
Yes, at the town building, in the main hallway, you'll find a binder, with the plan there. It's at the Athenaeum up on the second floor, in that research library. If you talk to Lincoln, he'll point you out where, that binder is, and, or we have a copy at our planning office as well. On that same note, Alan, thanks for, mentioning the document. That I did put a lot of effort in order to, make sure that the plan had a lot of thrift and just get it down from a 200+ page document down to a 36-page document. So it's much easier to get through. And there's just a lot of work to cross out a lot of words and get rid of some graphics and, make it more succinct.
Exactly. I appreciate that. Plus the fact that, there's a lot of valuable information in there, and that's what I'm really interested in, is digging through some of that information that's included. So great. I can do it either way, on my computer, or if I want to go to the library and do it in person. So thank you.
Mike,
You
I got
can.
really jumped out at me after I thought about it. And that was the one on the survey results of the participants. Did I read that correctly, that the income was 200,000?
Half over not resident. Yeah.
And I had to, I did a little bit of a sabbatical in the Houston Galveston region, before moving back. I got to say the incomes there were much lower than they are if you look at Nantucket County. So when I initially set up the options for the incomes, I was using the thresholds that we used in Houston. Well, it was mentioned to me like, hey, there's actually a lot of people in Nantucket that make more than 200 or even 250,000 a year. So you should probably have a few more thresholds higher up. So yeah, I did that. And I was, it kind of surprised me that we have such a large number a household income over 200,000, but that's who we got higher responses from. It was that from those income brackets over 200,000, older homeowners. So we just have to do a better job of reaching out to the rental populations, lower income folks, and especially younger populations. We had the under 25 response rate was just not very good at all.
I mean, I gotta believe, town employees didn't know, unless I'm mistaken and need to go back and look at the town report, town employees aren't making over $200,000.
Unless two
Even with two people working.
unless two are married to each other.
So,
Just a couple of people.
Yeah.
so anyway, I find it hard to believe.
Yeah.
Anybody else have questions? For Mike?
I'll try.
Rick?
Mike, it's Rick Atherton. It seems to me that the funding issue, bites us all the time, sort of what Matt referred to. So there are gonna have to be, I assume, a lot of choices as we move along here. We don't, I think I saw the maintenance funding deficit, if that's the right phrase for it, was like $49 million. I just picked out a number by chance. And it gives you a feel for what we're not getting done. And so how are we gonna make the choices if we only spend, 30 million as opposed to 90 between new roads, maintenance, intersections? Do we just wait until it happens? So what's gonna go on?
We're gonna start another event in the summer, like for the pops, we'll do it for the roads.
That's a great idea.
So we might have
And
to.
we can extend the runways at the airport so we get more planes going. Couldn't be,
That's-
couldn't be.
Yeah, no, Rick, I appreciate the question. Thanks for asking that. I'd like to say that we try to tell a little bit of a story with this as well. We did our public outreach and surveying. The second biggest concern from the public that we heard, and this is everybody said this. Number one was congestion. Number two was pavement quality. And that's reinforced through the data that we collect. Our pavement management study and evaluations show that the pavement quality is getting a little low. for our action plan, we're gonna need to get to your point, put in requests annually for, the report tells us 13 million annually to address that. And if that doesn't happen, well, the report and the data and the engineers tell us that the roads are degrade faster than they should, or they'll get neglected and it'll cost more to actually rebuild them or do some kind of other maintenance activity. So I like to say that we told a story of the public told us what is not doing very well is pavement quality. We have the data, so we're informed with data that says that they're in bad quality. So that should lead to an action plan where we put in a request for a budget that can address all of that. And if not, then when we go back 4 years from now and update the plan, I'm guessing the rating systems, if the investments weren't made, the rating will be even lower. The public will be more of a public outcry that things are getting even worse, and it'll spiral in that direction until we, as a group, as a community, reinvest into pavement management, and then we'll start trending in the positive direction. And one of the performance measures is the mileage of roadway that's in poor condition. We can set that on what it is today, and then see if we're getting better at that 4 years from now, 8 years from now, 12, or not.
Mike, just one quick follow-up. I mean, Nat had an idea about berms on the edge of the road, and that might be very helpful. Is that gonna be worked into the queue? Because there are a lot of roads where they're crumbling on the edges. And, you know, some solution like that might be a godsend. I don't know.
Yeah, Nat, I think we do need to, I don't know Andrew that well yet as our new DPW director. That would be part of the investment. We would do the annual appropriation and then change how we actually go out and maintain the roadways, and just pick a design standard that we know works and will have good integrity and longevity.
You, can I just say something? Mike, I love you to death, okay? Well, let me just kind of go before Mike a little bit of BM here before Mike. All right. If you take Cliff Road by the water tower, and if you had pictures of the edges of that road before it's been done in the last, say, 10 years. Lawrence and Lynch did that road, and the edges all had slope retainment. Why? Because the water goes, it's up. I mean, water has to be contained in a gutter, or else it wears, it undermines the edge. Now it's all piecemeal with some with nothing. Now, another spot, right across from Pulling Mills entrance. I'm surprised the vehicle hasn't flipped over there.
Yeah.
But that's because, and I don't know why this doesn't get done for verbatim, but there's something in the last 15 years-ish, it could be a little longer, it's in that area, where we just sort of stopped doing those things. Even if there was a berm there before, you have to have a berm on a slope because of the water, like you have to. New Street in Wisconsin just got redone last summer. It's exactly 18 feet 6 inches wide. I measured it. I'm a nutcase. I measured, I checked things and found out why they didn't put a berm. I'm not gonna say it in this meeting. Good. But I'm just telling you, right now, if you go out there, it's all washed out.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what to say. Now, Mike, every new road, I don't like that term new, okay, but let's just say Boulevard and Tacoma have berms, and they're perfect. And they're gonna last for years. Why? Because they were done monolithically. With the machine is doing the edge while it's putting down that traveled way. That's how it works. It's like a monolithic pour of concrete, same thing. On older roads, when we resurface them, there's this tendency to put them back to whatever they were, but that's like weird, and you end up with something, well, it's pretty, but it ain't it better, right? So there's a section of road on Mattocket that Victor did it the right way without being told. From the water tower, I mean, from the telephone towers to that swing bend where people pull over and sort of park there, you know, after 156, 160, that little road. So around that big bend before you go towards the dump, that is 22 feet wide with shoulders. But it never had them. And he did it without kind of being told to do it. And look how good it is. That's what Sconset Road needs to be like. Sconset Road's only 20 feet, just so you know. That's scary. It's like the Bourne Bridge, so you're right next to your mirror, right? You're right next to your mirror, so. Now, another thing that Mike knows, and this is stuff that's gone on years ago, we've had. Articles passed at town meeting about improvements not being allowed in certain parts of the island. The turning lane at Macy's is just outside the district where they're not allowed. That was in that late 90s when you were just getting wound up. So it's true, and Mike knows about that, and these are the things that general public has absolutely no idea about any of this. And I think if we just do things right when we're doing something, the public will be happy. They don't know why the front roads fall apart. They don't understand what a Cape Cod berm is. They just don't know. They just see what they see, right? And I'm just, we need to start over because everything's expensive. It ain't free anymore to do anything. So, yeah, so that's all. I'm sorry to talk so much, but this has been something I've been working on for a while. I don't get up at the microphone, start yelling and accuse people of things and do all sorts of weird stuff. I talk to people that are actually doing it and try to figure out how to make it better. Without, fanfare. It's not right to be disparaging people. You just have to figure out a better way.
All right,
Anyway,
one other thing, Mike, when you're chatting with the DPW and getting up to speed with him, can you ask him about Joy Street and
Hummock Pond, that's actually Hummock Pond there. What comes through.
right in front of Billy Barrett's house?
That is technically Hummock Pond Road.
Whatever it is.
It's crazy. but
Go
it
to
is.
Billy Barrett's house. And head to town. So that intersection right there, that's, I guess it's been determined that stop signs not needed, because it's.
You come up to Mount Vernon.
It's been laying on the ground. When you come, you're coming from Hummock Pond,
And the steel plates in the
the
road.
steel plate, well, the other day, the steel plate was out of the road because the bus hit it. So anyway, I'm just surprised that we haven't had somebody drive right into, because the stop signs are gone. And that's a heavily, probably because it's so heavily traveled, nobody bails through there. But,
They automatically slow down just because they
Because
know
they
what
have
they're
to.
doing. Yeah.
but I don't know if we're, as a community, liable because the stop sign has been taken down and left down that long, or what, but the construction site, the town is doing. And, I just think we ought to make sure we aren't leaving ourselves open for,
That was probably part of the stop thing, when they stopped all the town repairs and stuff
could be.
in June.
Yeah.
That was as far as they got, well, leave it the way it is until after Labor Day.
So anyway, all right, we're gonna move on, but thank you, Mike. Unless you have nothing else to do, you certainly welcome to stay, but thank you for joining.
No, appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
Take care.
Thank you, Nat.
Mr. Chair, I'm afraid I have to
Yeah.
excuse myself. I think the last part of that discussion could formulate a lot of our helpfulness for the town. So we need to get,
I was gonna say that.
you know,
There's a different part of this meeting, just to
Yeah.
kind of like, we gotta kind of like. Somehow start over without starting over. We don't do everything completely. It's sort of like getting a stage set up to do your roof, but the lead on your chimney, oh, we'll get that later. Yeah, but you're already on the roof.
Town does a lot of that.
It's true.
so don't give up, Mr. Wall.
See you later. I'm
Town
trying.
does a lot of that.
So, let's see if we can't wrap this up quickly here. We need to
I have something. to bring
share
up.
this. Wrong one. Well, since I'm here.
Sponsored
I've
law.
checked with Lee, and this is our location of public ways marker. And there was a convoluted document. Lee asked me to try to tighten it up a bit because it's multi application melding. there's only so much that can be done without totally redoing it. And I don't have all the photos in it, but anyway, so what I've done is, modified it so that it's not 60 pages long and half of the pictures are in a different space or whatever. So, if you'd like, I would send this to you, to have a copy of it, but our idea is that we're gonna replace the one that's currently on the town website with this.
Yeah.
More,
Organ science,
Condensed.
same.
yeah. Um,
Good.
so anyway, I will, get that to, Lee to include in the minutes so we can deal with that. The other item to bring to your attention is, the Sconset Bluff signage. They went, the Sconset Civic Association went to the sign committee and here. And they were asked to modify the sign. To make it look less like a Word doc. So this is what has been suggested by the sign committee. That organization has gone out, gotten this made up, and they're in the process of getting a final approval. And because we had said that we endorsed it, they wanted to make sure that we were okay with it, whatever, so.
I like the line about poison ivy and ticks. They might say, or stray dogs or anything else to scare people off the back.
Yeah. I know what you were thinking.
I like that. You know, like,
So, anyway, we really don't have any say on it, it's, but they just brought it to our attention because, we had, endorsed them, trying to do something with the verbiage update, so I just wanted to make sure. it
And
happened.
this seems to meet what they were looking for. I mean, they put this together.
Yeah.
I'm surprised that they pointed out the 6 ways.
I was a little bit-
They aren't all marked, but be that as it may,
maybe they'll spread people out. It's like,
it was,
Sorry.
it's probably good information for people to have to know
Yeah.
that, in case they don't see a sign there, they might do it. But other than that, I certainly have no objection to it.
One of the things I want to bring up that you know all about, because you're on the land bank. What is the answer to the poop bags? I mean, they're everywhere. Like, whatever happened to just flicking it off into the bushes that no one's walking in down the hill? They throw the bags are all like, we saw them when we took the walk. I couldn't believe it. So this dog bag is now become okay to litter
Well,
and
no,
just throw it
here's-
or leave it? I don't understand.
here's the mentality among some of the dog walkers. Okay, they're walking along early on, dog does his business, it walks another couple miles, they leave it with the intention of coming
You
back.
think that's what they do?
I think
See, I
some
wouldn't have
people,
thought of that.
I think some people do.
I mean,
but-
it's mind
But do
boggling.
they come back?
Yeah.
I mean, it's almost like we're
They
preserving.
don't wanna take it for a mile in their hand.
I don't know, you couldn't put something in the sign,
Otherwise, the people
But-
don't care what you
but-
say.
Would you?
it's true it's worse now because
It's just
they're
they
it's
clean up. after.
staying
You got you got the bags for.
hanging in the bushes and stuff like
So
that.
I,
Better you just.
Those are the
flip
people
it
that
off.
aren't coming
so
back.
I think, the thing is,
But I think that's
any
good.
change in the verbiage would have to start all over.
Yeah.
I think it's good. No, I'm not suggesting it. I'm just saying,
And you see their list of priorities.
I
by
think
the
it's
way,
good.
they
I think
Keep
it's
your
great.
voices quiet was the first priority.
Key
It
thing is
didn't
sunset.
start with the, so
So
that's.
and I
their list
believe
of
they're
priorities.
also, have been working with the community service officers, they were talking about funding one, whatever, so.
somebody to kind of wander around out there.
So,
I like the Lincoln Circle.
Yeah. Oh, I didn't know we had that.
Lincoln Circle has one at night.
Oh,
Stays all night.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Okay.
so they're
People might
not,
have fires and.
they're not the only, there's several places that have. it.
Yeah, I mean, private people said full funding, if you wanted it, it's overtime pay for somebody.
All right, so a couple of other items.
I haven't leave business.
I mentioned, speaking of that, Snooki, you found,
I found a printout
of the court report when Mrs. Mitchell tried to close the footpath in 1930. I've got the whole thing printed out here and I've given Bill a copy.
I love to see a copy of that.
So, what I will
I've
do,
got a copy home.
what I will do is,
Did you really?
Yeah,
You have one?
I will
Oh, yeah.
scan this and,
Oh, my-
send it to, everybody as well as, the leak and put it in the minutes.
Is that gonna be in the looking backward column? That would be good.
I
What year does it
I
have to
like
be?
this. This is
Has to
great.
be a 5-year increment or
Taking
25
the
year.
social law library, I like that.
There are a couple of other things.
I have to do this.
We chatted briefly, last month about Jefferson Ave. Going to the water. And, so Ken Bogran is out, so I checked with Erica, she's. She needs a new hat rack, because she just got an additional hat, she's covering for Ken while he's out on medical. So she has started to send along some documents, from the takings, back at that time.
Good.
And,
That's good.
so I think that it might behoove us to, just take that up, as a side issue and see if we can find out.
That's one like step speech access and it needs to be,
Yeah.
that's, it
So we
could
can
become a priority with the new owner. That's what I'm
So before we, open up the can of worms, we can check into it here before we make an official.
Right. I have to.
And one last thing,
Okay. Do this.
and then I will take yours, and that is, we just pull up. I didn't realize this until I sent a message to Erica, and I think it's something to check out. And forgive me, Ed, why don't you bring yours up while I go look for my item?
This is new but old business. And perhaps a solution while they're standing on the roof like that, so down the way. The encroachments. They're not getting less, they're getting more. And it's not just,
Baxter Road.
well, yes, but it's not just during events like the pops when people don't want people parking in here and there. Go up in the cliff area right now. There's rocks, there's
Steel.
sticks, there's everything there. Exactly. And I think the town needs to develop a policy. I mean, right now, of course, that's the road layout.
Yeah.
And I guess someone could park in it. Well, it is kind of offensive for some contractor to park his truck over the weekend in front of someone's, house.
course.
all week. So we should determine in what areas that we want the parking to be and what areas we don't, and stripe them. Put a yellow line there. So if the yellow line's there, you don't need these big rocks that they have, all these other, they're dangerous. At night, they're dangerous.
Can we ask through you? I want to ask Alan a question because he knows all this and I've kind of forgotten some of this, the 75 takings. Part of that issue,
Oh, you can
Albert,
Jefferson.
some of these roads were part of that 75 mistake. Where only the traveled way was technically in the layout, and it only got solved, I think it was about 6 or 7 years ago-ish, right? I know, we have to stop saying circa now, Alan, right? But I know it's in that area, but these homeowners have become conditioned to stake or rock their front area. Now, I'm not saying they shouldn't be able to either. I agree with your way of looking at it.
They see their neighbor.
But
They
here's
believe it.
a solution to this is ensconcing. Go to number 40 Baxter Road, see what she did. You have 2 houses with this nice, Miss, what's her name? Our old friend. Oh, hold on a minute, Mrs. Barr, right?
Oh,
So- That little area of shell pulled over, you can just sort of park.
Right.
It's beautiful. It's Nantucket, it's Front Street, I'm not Front Street, around Codfish Park.
Yeah, but
Whatever that,
But that's why, because
It's normal.
because she also uses it herself.
but
That's
no,
why
but
she
no,
did
but I know,
it. Yeah, I
but
know.
but they don't have a driveway. That's,
I
so
know.
what I'm getting at is there's a solution that's a Nantucket solution that isn't asphalt. Cause it ain't, it's not gonna be asphalt, it's gonna be something else.
No, I don't.
That's what I mean.
Yeah, yeah.
So I think if they're in the layout and they're creating this blockage issue, right? If we could get all the rocks back from everywhere, we might be able to fix the erosion issue. But anyway, because that's what they use them for other things. But if we could create these cute little parking areas as a result of these people not being able to block it, but this is what we'd like you to do, and you still get to have your, you know, front area the way you want, but it's gonna have to be made to have at least one vehicle. There's ways to fix this, but it's gonna be complicated.
I've seen.
It's not gonna happen
I've
tomorrow.
seen people even on Western Ave and some other places mark the road layout in front of their house as parking for such and such house only,
Yeah,
which is their house, of course. But it's not.
no, I know. It's very complicated when you get into road
But
layout stuff.
people, what people are doing is they're saying their neighbors, or they're feeling stupid that they don't do it. They have a construction in the neighborhood, they figure they don't want contractors to park there all day long, which you can kind of see that.
It's,
But, so we need to determine where do we want parking and where we do not want parking.
and that
I
would
think
be
that gets-
a complicated project,
But I
but
think,
it could happen.
but I think, and then when you do the roads, you strike the road. They still haven't striped a lot of the roads and paved it,
Well,
so.
And 2 houses up from that spot. The hedge comes right out like that, the fire hydrant is right like that, and that hedge is gonna disappear this fall.
oh,
Ah, there we go. Well,
State law says all fire hydrants must have a minimum of 3-foot clearance.
Oh.
Operating on the top all the way around,
if you say 3,
3 feet.
yeah, right.
By the way, the water company does maintain those, or if they get a complaint, if somebody calls in, the water company will send somebody out and trim around the hydrant because of the safety issues.
Yeah. Another interesting play, or two of them I'm saying, is that, okay, I know the property that I sold the property. So I know where the bounds were of the property, right? But of course, there's road layout here. So what did the people do? They went and planted in front of their already property, a nice hedge that it looks very nice.
Mhm.
And the road's not, you know, it's kind of a more rural road type thing, but way out in front. So now everyone will think that obviously that's their property, right? They won't park here and there's a hedge and everything else. Another person replaced a fence. I mean, and the fence is clearly in the road layout.
Well, if I'd have been on the select board, when they came in complaining about this foot traffic on footpath. Made a motion that we do not discuss it until all the encroachments are removed. The entire length of Baxter Road. That would take at least 2 years. So much hedge, fences.
it's
Well, like the one that we saw in our little walk out there where they.
that one, the 6x6s that we saw do need to jiggle a little
But,
bit.
but it was worse than that. It's, they came out with that, but they also created a fence across the street. And it made it look like they had a private garden across the path,
I know.
which is really part of the path.
So let's jump off of the bluff for a moment.
Okay.
And the other item I wanted to bring to your attention was.
Oh, all right, so let's talk about that, 1799 legal.
That's
Bill, crazy.
What's this?
So that's
blocking the sidewalk.
whatchamacallit's old property there, that's
No, I know where you're going. I know where it is.
what's the guy's name up on
Champion?
Champion?
Yeah.
Okay, so when we, all right, so I hate to say it, I know about this, help me. All right, so my beautiful loading zone where the popcorn stand used to be is exactly 48 feet, which is exactly the length of the pup trail with the ramp out, thank you, Natalie. But when this all this controversy about parking in front of entities, one of the worst planning board decisions ever was to create that parking lot that they didn't need. Let the building come out and everybody's got no parking, that's the way it's supposed to be. But anyway, this all came up, Steve Cohen was his attorney, found out that they own, so that they own it.
Yeah.
Right to the road.
Oh, okay.
It's
They own-
ridiculous.
So they own where the pot-
Absolutely ridiculous. This is similar to the Toby's parking space
Yeah.
thing that happened with Mrs. Lesk and her little car used to park there. And,
So they do own the where those.
they
planters
own
are.
it, and back before he sold that place, this was one of those sort of discussion items. If you give us what we want, we'll give you this and that, and it never really materialized. The issue there is, I don't wanna say unfixable, but it's complicated, like, to get that fixed. You have to do an unfriendly taking probably, and that's not really in the right, you know.
I kind of
that.
wonder, when,
People just walk in the street anyway, because it's one way and it's an alley.
See,
It doesn't function like a street.
I personally
Well-
don't know why they have that there, because they're supposed to be
Been there for
encouraging.
years.
I know, but they're supposed to be encouraging people
well,
to come to those
it's got
stores.
worse with the Cisco trucks coming in. to
Well,
unload.
but, yeah,
But it's interesting, because I'm wondering, when the town redid, both sidewalks behind the Dreamland, both sides of the street. They also did this whole sidewalk, including this wrap. So I just find it interesting. It's not the first time the
So in
town,
other words, the town helped out on provinces and paving and so on.
yeah.
Interesting.
So, so this street now is getting more and more clogged. As the juice bar traffic. Line is on the west side.
Well, the juice bar lot now goes in front of the town building.
Yeah,
They now have someone directing people across the street.
Yeah.
It's,
so
So
anyway,
one way to correct this would be to go to the owner or the builder of the property and. Tell them if they remove those obstructions to the sidewalk, that will pin the yellow line along there, so.
There's
Where
already
he
a
is.
yellow line there.
but
problem is, it's.
this is, again, when the original plan came in to make that entire alley a loading zone.
Yeah.
I knew that couldn't work, and that's when I got out my tape measure, went to the meeting and got, Rick Apton was one of the people that voted for the parking, for the one we have now. The problem is, when there's a lot of stuff to deliver, and there's somebody in the one at the Dreamland or in the one on Oak Street, right? They gotta go somewhere,
They're gonna park. where
and they're gonna park, and in this road functions like Independence Alley almost, not quite like that, not like that, but vehicles come out of the back. Moped lessons over here, I mean, I've seen it all down there, it's
Yeah.
unbelievable. And the loading zone that's there is really a trash pickup loading zone, it's not really a loading zone, it's more of wheel the dumpsters out of that little thing and jump them down on the curb into the, that's how they do it.
Yeah.
I watch how they do
It's
it.
meant for the old,
It's
unloaded, smaller.
Old
trucks.
school loading zone, it doesn't really work, and it needs to be bigger, but it's complicated. The answer to this, Bill, is, I think new owners might not care as much as the previous one.
well, it's even more exacerbated now because.
People should be able to walk
The
there.
truck,
Ridiculous.
taco.
He's got his little
outfit,
trailer,
Yeah, the trailer,
saw
they
that.
stock every day.
Yeah.
Cisco, comes in.
Yeah.
The guy out in New Bedford
Wayne,
comes in.
Yeah.
And so,
good. whatever.
People should be able to walk there, but
especially in the
yellow
morning.
line should be enforced. And that's the
This,
problem.
in
People-
my opinion, it should
people
be
will
some
park
sort of a
there.
license, I don't know, those flower pots or bush pots or tree pots, whatever they are. That is like, if they were anywhere else, they wouldn't be there, but because you can walk in the street. It's almost as if it's okay, Harry Gordon,
Yeah.
right?
I mean, even if they were pushed to the curb. You could have, right now, it's right in the middle, so you can't,
Either way, I know.
either side, you can't go by.
And that was like that when, 10 years ago, when this came up with Steve was his representative, and I actually was at Rob Champion's house talking about this once. It was unbelievable,
So
but
why-
anyway,
Why did Bob say he put them there?
it's part of the any and the T thing. They don't want to become the new loading zone.
Right, exactly.
So,
So
You
they
see
want-
what I mean?
So they.
What's gonna happen if those are gone, the vehicles will be up on the curb,
Right.
which can I say something? It's better.
It is better.
I'm just saying, it would
I
be
know.
better.
For the
So
public,
you
it's
can't
better.
say that, but it's true.
For the public, but not for him.
Next summer, the trucks are gonna get here earlier.
Anyway, anything else?
Just touch back on New Street, Wisconsin. Originally, New Street, Wisconsin, this section that's was reverse pitch. The center was lower That water came down and drained into that triangular piece between New Street and Milestone.
Front of Brooks.
And you can't do anything on Milestone Road without state approval.
That's what you say.
That is a state highway. From 30 feet this side of the rotary and starts it to the one over here.
Well, that's in the state. There's a lot involved with doing that, because when they did that little subdivision, 7 Mile Lane, you know, off the
Yeah.
right. To do that last little bit to connect to the state highway took months and months. Just to do a very simple kind of a, you know.
All right, so, any further business? Otherwise, somebody make a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
Alan, seconded by
Second.
Second,
Vicky. Roll call. First up, we should note, for Lee, when he goes to take the minutes, that, Rick had to leave the meeting.
You left at 5:01-ish.
5:01.
Something like that.
That's an official time.
Yeah, 5:01-ish in that area.
close enough.
So, the motion is made seconded. Alan Reinhardt. Aye. Rick Atherton is not here. Nat Lowell.
Aye.
Bill Smith. Aye. Elson Eldred.
Yeah.
Ed Gillum.
Aye.
Bill Grader. Aye. All right, thank you all very much and see you next month.
Thank you all for
I will not.
putting up with me.
The encroachment thing that started bothering me more.
Thank you all. You have a good night.
We just,
All right, good night. Thank you.
Mike, take care.
Stay around for the whole thing.